Hi everybody, it's Sister Ruth here. I woke up this morning to the news of a supposed bucket bomb on the tube in London. It is September the 15th, 2017. I wasn't going to cover this because the first headline I saw was a woman complaining that she got her hair singed. So I thought this is just one of those wag of the dog stories. It's a minor incident and the media are going to play it all it's worth to get race baiting going, to get us all worried about the next boogeyman under the bed, or on this case on the tube train. So I wasn't going to give it any attention. Then I read one of the articles and noticed that there was some of the obvious numerology, that if you've been following any of these events, you know, they always use. There were 22 people taken to hospital at the time I read the article, and the time of the bomb was 8:20 in the morning, and 8 and 2 give you 10, and that's 10, 22, 11. We obviously know that they like to use all those numbers in articles when they are communicating with each other. So I thought this is one of those articles. This is not a significant incident. It is to get fear going and to get us all hating on each other, which is one of their goals, to create division. So I wasn't going to cover it. And then Ritchie from Boston, who does some really good analysis on some of these things. I don't agree with everything he says, but on this one he's spot on. And he put up something that I hadn't noticed, I hadn't picked up on, because I only skim read the article, just looked for the numbers. That's usually the first thing I do these days, is to look for the numbers and the elements that are in play. And he noticed something about names, which is quite interesting. So I am going to just play a clip from Ritchie's video here, which is quite enlightening. Just bear with me a moment, just find the right kind of spot. And then I am going to talk more about this event. And although Ritchie is right on the names, there's actually more that feeds into this ritual, which is what it actually was. It was a part of a bigger satanic ritual. And I will explain that more after I've played you this clip from Ritchie's video. So sorry about accidentally pausing the video in the middle of that. But, that is the three names, Crowley, Parsons and Hubbard. Now, one thing I would say is that Jack Parsons was a student of Aleister Crowley. Some would call him a disciple. Aleister Crowley was the father of modern Satan worship, and L. Ron Hubbard, along with Jack Parsons, Walt Disney and a couple of other shady characters, went on to become what they call the founding fathers of NASA. L. Ron Hubbard also, of course, founded the cult that is Scientology. And so there's all those things in play. And have we had NASA in the news recently? Well, if you think back to the two hurricanes, we have one in Houston and one in Florida. Where are NASA's main locations? It's the Houston Space Center, the Kennedy Space Center, and of course the Cape Canaveral launch pad. The latter two are in Florida, the Houston, of course, in Texas. Both of those areas affected by those two hurricanes. So I knew the other day that NASA was in play for some reason, because of the locations that those hurricanes hit. I wondered if maybe they are going to shut down NASA and pass off their so-called space program to people like SpaceX, because there are so many of us questioning NASA these days that maybe they would rather do it under the radar through a private subcontractor. That was my anticipation. I still anticipate that, but there are other things going on today that make for very interesting reading. For example, if you look at today's date, Ritchie was talking in that video about the numerology of the involved in the ages of some of the supposed victims, who are probably nothing more than crisis actors, in that event with that firecracker in London. Well, today happens to be the 15th of September, which gives you 1, 5 and 9 in play. If you take the 1 and 5 from 15, add them together, you get 6. Now, when these people do numerology or work with words and letters and numbers, they sometimes like to flip things around and turn things upside down. So you turn the 9 upside down, you get another 6, and then if you add the 6 from the day to the 9 for the month, you get 1 and 5, and 1 and 5 of course gives you another 6. So that gives you 3 6s, 6 for the day, 6 for the month, and 6 for both added together, 3 6s just in today's date. But it's probably all coincidence, right? Of course, there's nothing suspicious about any of the numerology in that article, and you saw Ritchie there pointing out the 2 6s in the just from those the age of those two victims, and I showed you the time of the incident and that kind of stuff as well. All points to this being part of a satanic ritual. I'd like to show you a photograph of the supposed bomb. This was no more than a firecracker in a bucket. Very little damage to the train, maybe a touch of smoke here. Thankfully, mostly minor injuries, bumps and scrapes, some minor burns. There's it says in there people reported seeing people covered in blood, but you don't see any pools of blood on the train, so I'm not buying that at the moment. It was probably small grazes and stuff. If you look here, this is a picture taken after as well, and as you can see, the train pretty much intact, no broken windows or anything. It'll be good to go again tomorrow morning. The other thing I wanted to say was about other events that were going on today, because I realised that when I realised the numbers that were in play, especially with the date. I had to look to see what else was going on. And with the NASA link, we interestingly have Cassini, the mission finishing today. This was their mission supposedly to Saturn. Now, I have long since got past the point of believing anything that NASA say they're doing. I believe it's all smoke and mirrors covering up their true activities, which could be absolutely anything. And the public face on NASA is nothing other than fairy tales for geeks. So Cassini supposedly had a final flyby of Titan on April 22nd. There's 22 right there. And then today, apparently it made 22 passes. Couldn't have been 23, 25 or 21. No, it's 22. And then today it was supposed to be going to crash into Saturn itself. Now obviously there was some people complaining about this because Cassini is supposed to be a nuclear powered probe, and people were saying that it was too risky to just plough a effective nuclear bomb into Saturn. Sorry, excuse me, I've still got my cough. And of course, when they thought they may have found quote unquote potential for life on Europa, which was supposed to be Cassini's final resting place, apparently, then they decided they were going to have to crash it into Saturn instead. I would put forward that Saturn was always going to be its final destination, because these people love to honour Saturn, aka Satan, and to get that name out into the media. So this is again another indicator of the fact that today has been part of a global ritual. It wasn't just a localized London event. This is a thing, people, we need to be seeing the bigger picture. We need to start seeing these as a chain of events, not as isolated local incidents. And if we go on to another thing that happened today, was of course that Korea fired a missile over Japan. So what is not being so much reported on is the fact that South Korea responded to that by firing a missile themselves. Now, when you realise that these missiles and rockets, these Satanists basically regard these things as being phallic symbols. So you have two phallic symbols there, but notice this also forms a pillar where you have the column of smoke and fire as it is being launched. That's why they love firing them off so much. And if you look into or know anything about Freemasonic imagery, you have the Masonic two pillars. So the governments of North and South Korea, between them, gave us our two phallic symbols. And then the event in London, again, further evidence that this is part of a global ritual honouring Saturn, honouring Satan, a satanic ritual, a dark evil ritual, part of this Illuminati pattern that we see so often these days. However, there are a couple of consequences to something like this London ritual, and I'll call it a ritual because that's what it was, that impact our daily lives. The first thing, obviously, is that it does spread fear. Fear and chaos is what these people thrive on. It's what they're trying to create. They're trying to create so much fear and chaos that when they come forward with their solution of a united one world government headed by the United Nations, we will welcome it with open arms. they will also clamp down on our freedoms while we're at it, but we will, or most of us will welcome the promise of security above the perceived dangers. And of course you will remember this gem from George Bush after the 9/11 events. Of course the anniversary of that was on Monday, and he said, and we have been supposedly fighting the boogeyman terrorist ever since. This is the Third World War, but it is a war against the people. How can you pin these terrorists down? They are going to try and take away our freedom of speech and that kind of stuff. There was already rumours that they're thinking of clamping down on freedom of internet, but apart from just spreading the fear and chaos, what this does, sorry, bear with me while this computer's just having a go slow moment, is to get us used to the idea of seeing heavily armed police on UK streets. This picture here in the bottom corner, you can see what I am talking about. We are not used to this sight here in the UK. I know it's more common in America, but we are used to our friendly unarmed bobby. We do not usually see, unless you maybe live in central London, you probably don't see that regularly. And this enables them to desensitise us to that kind of sight, so that when they want to put more armed police on the ground, there will be less protests, because we will be more used to that sight here in the UK. So this was a satanic ritual. It was designed to create fear. I expect in the coming days you're going to hear a lot of incidents of suspicious packages around London and other big cities, and we are obviously on high alert for any false flag events, any more of these rituals in the build up towards the September the 23rd. I am expecting something to take place on that day, or a couple of days either side. It is not going to be the rapture. I do not think it is a rapture, but it's more than likely to be one of these rituals or one of these false flag events. So I will certainly be keeping my eyes and ears open in the next few days. I will be doing another video tomorrow probably to update you on Jose and the weather warfare situation and the FEMA situation. I may be able to get it out tonight, I'm not entirely sure. But that is it from me at the moment. I just wanted to put out there that this was a part of a bigger ritual, but fortunately it looks like the London leg did not see any fatalities, which is unusual. They usually do have their sacrificial victim or victims, but fortunately this time it looks like it was just bumps and scrapes and probably a few people in shock. But in any case, I would like to conclude this video, as I will be concluding most of my videos with the Aaronic blessing. So if you do not want me to, or if you do not want to hear the blessing, then you should end the video now. Please like, share and subscribe. It does help other people find this information. So Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. May Yeshua be with you all.